i.B.Artin. Tell him i.B.Artin. Yeah. i.B.Artin.
What's up, guys?
Hello, everybody.
How are you?
Welcome back.
Welcome back to the i.B.Artin podcast, you guys. It's Kira and Mars, your favorite co-host. Happy to be back with you. We have another special guest,
of course,
this week. We're just kind of like jumping right into things, you know, with this season. You know, don't have time to spare, but
at all.
We have another special guest with us this week that we're so happy to have on. But before we have him introduce himself, just wanted to say thank you to Leo for being on last week. If you haven't checked out that episode, make sure you go back and do so. Really great highlights that we've been posting on our Instagram of him. So yeah, just show some love to that episode, and yeah, let's keep growing this podcast. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Mars,
keep it coming. Keep it going.
Keep it going. Do you want to introduce our guest?
I was gonna say you should introduce our special guest.
So we have a special guest. He's my man.
Right.
He's my man, y'all. But he is also an artist. So, you know, that is what this podcast is all about. But joining us today is film photographer and musician / Kira's man's Kavion Sabio.
Hey, what's going on, guys? How you doing?
Oh, yeah.
Come on, podcast voice.
Oh, I know, right? It's so good. He's got the late night DJ vibes going on.
It really is.
But yeah, we're just gonna jump right in, dive in, you know, have him introduce himself, and we're just gonna like talk to him about education and what that looks like in his life as an artist. As you guys know, that is our like theme for this season. So yeah, Cav, tell us about yourself.
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name's Kavion Sabio. I am a film photographer, musician, as Kira said. I have been doing music all of my life, and I got into film photography in about the past 4 to 5 years, shooting a lot of street photography, portraiture, working on my own personal project. I've worked on some shoots with Grammy Award-winning musician Brian Newman. I've done some editorial work for TV reality star and model Ashley Rodriguez. So yeah, a couple of nice things under my belt.
Sweet. Well, good grief. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Of course, and just being willing to, you know, share your experience and talk about what this journey has been like for you, especially with like all the mediums that you work on. It's a range. So
thank you.
And that's a talent on its own.
I know, being like multidisciplined in art, not just in your field, but you know,
in many fields, because that's a lot of hours and a lot of work to put in.
Yes, it is. Yes, ma'am.
So I mean, going into that, like, how did you get into these things? Like, of course, you said you've done all your life, and you recently have gotten into film photography. So, like, what has that been like for you? What does that look like?
I have to say, it's been an experience, because I started with film photography when I was actually homeless. So I had some rough times over a few years. And I randomly just one day was walking in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, shout out to Brooklyn, and I was in the area going to pay respect to a friend's mother who had passed away from cancer. And while I was in the area, I was a little early, and I happened to pass by the street sale, and this guy was selling a bunch of like old school stuff, you know, radios, cassette players, I think, some things like that, some furniture. And I saw like a row of cameras, and I was just like, oh, these are cool. And I'd seen like a Nikon, a Canon, things like that, and I was like, I don't want to have a name brand camera, because I don't want someone to look at it and be like, oh, it must be something. And I'm like, I can't afford to lose things. So I bought just random, like, no logo camera for like $60, literally the last $60 in my account. And I just started really getting into it, and I just fell in love with it, because it wasn't something that cost a lot of money in comparison to like buying a digital camera. And at the time, film rolls only cost about $3. So I was like, oh, okay, I could afford this. So I started getting into it, watching a lot of YouTube videos and shooting street photography, and just really like getting very deeply involved with research and everything like that. So yeah, that's how it came to be.
Quick question about film photography. I feel like digital photography is super well known. And so I guess what is the difference between film and digital photography?
So with film and digital, the main difference really comes down to what you're seeing, because with digital photography, you're always able to take your what they call test shots, to see how everything's looking. What's your ISO? What's your aperture? What's your shutter speed? Things like that. And with film photography, you have to have things very set. So if you're shooting on a roll of film, which is only at ISO 400, that's the ISO you have to keep when you're shooting until you're done with the roll. So everything really depends on like the lighting that you have. You don't have the ability to really change much except for like your shutter speed, like 1/1000th of a second, 1/250th, and then your aperture, which is like 0.5, 5.6, f4, f8, f11. However, along with that being the main difference, another main difference is you only have a certain amount of shots, less than 40. You have less than 40 shots until you're done with the roll. And because of that major difference, a lot of the times film photographers, not hobbyists, there's nothing wrong with hobbyists, but people who are very like enamored with it and like want to create a career from it, they have to be very intentional on what they're shooting, because there's no doubling back. Like you have those 36 to 39 shots depending on how you start your roll. But yeah, that's it. And you don't find out about it until later, which is actually a good thing, because you're giving yourself, I like to say, like you're giving your future self a present, because when you do get those photos back, it's just like, oh yeah, I did that. There's no amount of editing on Lightroom. There's no amount of AI powered anything that can make a really bad photo look better. So yeah.
Wow. I feel like if I were a film photographer, I would be like so nervous taking every single one of my shots, just because like you said, it's like you have, what do you say,
36 to 39, less than
39.
40. Yeah.
Like, whereas like digital, like even on our phones, it's like click, 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 click,
Right.
click. Oh, I hate these. Delete. Let me start over, kind of thing.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Like there's a do-over button, but like you said, like with film photography, like there isn't a way to do that, especially once you get it back. Like that's it. That's what you got.
What you got is what you got. That's it.
So have you ever had moments where you got your roll back and you were like, this is awful, like I want to go back? Like, have you ever redone a photo shoot in the past because of unsatisfaction?
Actually, no. I've never redone a photo shoot because, one, I really couldn't afford it at the time. and two, it's really one of those things where I'm like, I really want to create something that is once, it's only one time you can do it that way, because one, people's schedules change and everything. People get busy. And two, because if you're redoing it, in my opinion, if you're redoing it, then it's just like you get a little bit more nervous, because you're like, oh, like what if it didn't
like
do
that pressure, like
right? The pressure's really there. But then that's why preparation is so important, which I'm always preparing very much so, like for certain things that I'm shooting. And I guess when I have messed up on rolls or like shots and stuff like that, and which is specifically a reason I love film photography, I don't beat myself up for it. In a world that I see where everything has to be, it has to be perfect, I have to take 50 selfies before I find one or two good ones, I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to shoot what I shoot. If it's good, it's good. If it's not, it's not. And I can learn from the imperfection. And that's what I like, the imperfection of it. Because it's kind of like it's like a general like knowledge that if someone's shooting on film, you know, then it's just like, oh, he got that shot. I know that that's not easy. So just like there's a little bit more, I'm not gonna say respect to it, because that's like just counting digital photographers, but it's to say, oh, okay, he's got skills because, or she has skills because you can't do that over. Like, it's like you have to know what you're shooting, and as soon as you shoot it and it's good, it's like, yeah.
It's like you can't accidentally get a shot. It's like everyone has to be like strategically planned out, so you know it'll come out good, right?
Right. Which is a reason why street photography is really good, because that's when you have more of a creative freedom to me, because you're just like, how am I taking a shot that's happening? How am I taking a shot that I can't recreate? Because sometimes the way people are walking in between something, or how they're subframed, just like, oh, I got the shot, you know, just like that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But because it's street photography, if there's anyone who's listening who wants to start film photography, start with street photography, because that's when you start to learn, you know, how much distance someone is from somebody else. That's called zone focusing. That's when you find out, okay, when's the light hitting this way? Like, how do I, like, you start to look at the world a little bit differently. You really start to appreciate the people that are around you, because they can make certain photos very artistic.
I feel like film photography, like the art of it's like I'm thinking about life. Like I'm thinking about like how, you know, when people are like, cherish the moments that you're in, because you know, you only get one of them, you know, like nothing ever happens the same way again. Like even us filming this podcast, like we've been in the studio so many times, but
we can never recreate
an episode, how we sit in a specific episode, you know. And so like I think it's like cool to hear that like there's like an art form out there that encompasses like all of that, you know. And it like I think especially like with art, it's so easy to like go down the rabbit's hole and it like pull you away from life, because you just get so like in the zone. But I don't know, it kind of sounds like film photography is one of those things where it's like, even if you're super focused, like you're still connected to what's around you, you know. You're still in it, because that's what you're capturing. And like you said, you only have like one shot kind of thing.
Exactly. As Eminem would say, you know, only one shot, one opportunity.
No, but like how you were describing, like not necessarily building the set, but building the shot and capturing the right shot, it just makes me think a lot about how like visual artists have to sometimes like build their composition, build what it is, build that frame that it is that they're about to draw or paint. And especially in terms of like painting, it's so permanent, right? Or things like if you're working with ink, it's so permanent. And with film, like you said, it's so permanent. Like you can't, you know, scrape off the paint, because the residue from it is still going to be there. You can't, you know, undo ink. Like that's there. That's there. Like that's it's a permanent. It's a permanent art form. Yeah, and like there's a lot of attention and skill, and also just like innate talent that I think goes into it as well, that a lot of people kind of don't really realize when they're working in such like permanent forms like this. So it's really interesting just to like see the comparison there, and also see it like play out in a different medium, because like I'm also taking intro to drawing this semester.
Period. She's an artist. Well, she's been an artist. We all. I'm saying, here, but
we bringing back the visual just a little bit.
Right.
No, but we were talking about building a composition, and like there's a girl in my class who has a really beautiful eye for building her compositions and knowing like how to sit it so that she can draw it in a really gorgeous way. She does amazing. So it just made me think about that, of like you're finding active, moving compositions and choosing the shot that's best, because you have that one shot.
Right.
And that's just
and it's
insane.
like the idea of taking like I'm thinking about street photography, like taking something that's moving but turning it into a still image, you know, like it's not posed, it's not whatever, which is I feel like typical for, you know, digital photography. You know, we hire somebody to take our grad photos, take our birthday photo shoot. March just had one, the pitch is 8 down.
Thank you.
It's like
won't no moving,
you know. It's like everything is like, you know, fixed in a way, but it's like film, or at least street photos, at least it's like you're creating you're creating a moment out of like many moments that's happening in front of you, which is like so cool. But also, Martha, you're speaking on like building the image, and oh my God, don't forget it. It's like right there. Dang it. I forgot what I was going to say.
It's going to come back.
Oh, I remember. It's like you were talking about building the image, and also like as it relates to like respect for an art form or like an artist, because you know how much time has been put into that, and like, you know, you've seen behind the scenes in your art class, and then, you know, you as a photographer, me in the studio building a dance, creating a dance. It's like, I really do feel like a lot of people forget how hard art is and like how much time it takes. And like what I love, I think, about being an artist is that when you speak to another artist, like that respect is like automatically there, because like you said, it's like someone looks at a film photo and they're like, oh, like we know that in order to get this shot they probably had to lean off of a post or something like that, you know, to get it. Like, you know, you don't have to explain yourself to people, which I think is nice, because I think to, you know, some non-artists, or at least like, you know, growing up, it kind of feels like you always have to justify your art form, justify your love for the art form, and be like, no, I spend so much time in it, like it's going somewhere, you know, I can make money from it, you know, like it's just, you know, it's just nice, like speaking to other artists, that whole aspect of justifying it, you know, just to feel like you're doing something is gone, because people relate to one another, and we know no matter what art you're doing, you know that it takes time to create that. So yeah, I just like, I think that's really cool.
And I mean, it also like clarifies that like a lack of understanding how a certain art form or any art form works, a lack of being able to appreciate the effort that was put into it is like just a sign of ignorance to that art form itself.
Yeah, and I think it can be a sign of and this isn't everyone, but like jealousy in a way.
Oh, for sure.
It's like it's like you're upset that like you can't do it, or like you didn't think about doing it. So it's like,
yeah,
you know. I wanted to ask you about musician life.
Okay.
So you mentioned that you were both, like you said, and Mars is a musician. And so what, before you did photography, you did music. What instrument did you play, or were you a vocalist? What did that look like in your life? What was it like navigating the music industry? Music is hard. I think that it's honestly one of the it's and I honestly think it's one of the hardest like industries to get into. That and like acting, like it's hard. Like you're competing with, it feels like literally the whole world. Like,
yes.
No, of course.
Every
body
in the world.
It's the art form that I feel like is, I'm not gonna say conquered, but the one that people feel like they need to conquer the most. Because it's like, okay, if you make it in this particular genre, especially if it's like classical or something kind of old like that, people are like, yeah, if you make it there, you're it. Like, you're it. Nobody can talk to you.
Well, and it's like when people are sorry, we're gonna
I just like, let me ask you. Okay, cool, but we're gonna talk. We're gonna answer that question, and then we'll ask you.
No, we're gonna hear your experience. But I just wanted to point out, it's like I like emphasizing how hard it is to get into it, because when people become musicians, they dominate the world, not just like a specific region. Whereas like with, you know, opera singers,
come on. Texas.
Whether it's like shout out H-Town, like opera singers, dancers, it's like we are known within, you know, we can be known within the United States, but it's not like a worldwide thing, you know, or I'm known within New York or in Texas or California, like, so it's easier to, you know, if you focus in that art form, you know, you can keep going with the hope that somebody will know your name one day, because somebody will. But it's like, I don't know, I just feel like music is very different. You're competing in a worldwide field, so
there are a lot of layers to it. So I can say as a visual artist, as a film photographer, in relation to being a musician. So to answer your first question, I've been doing music, like I said, all my life. I was raised in the church. I was in, choir. I was in chorus in school literally from kindergarten until I graduated high school. Like, I would sing at any and every karaoke opportunity that I saw. I would create my own karaoke opportunities and like sing with friends. I would be singing Beatles songs while we listened to them in each headphone. Like my life was, and still to a point, dominated by music. With that being said, I picked up the guitar around the end of my freshman year. Officially, I picked it up when I was about 13, 14, when I started listening to Green Day. Shout out to Billy Joe Armstrong. And I put it down for some time, and then I picked it back up in college. I had done it since then, so I've been doing it for years and years and years. The time that it takes to understand how to properly play an instrument, I understand, Mars, you play violin. So you understand from one instrumentalist to another, the time it takes just to learn how to properly navigate your instrument is at least 2-3 years, to proficiently do it, and then to like be masterful at it can be another year or two, just to make sure you're playing within the proper tempo that you're given. And the same amount of time that I took to learn guitar is the same amount of time that I've been doing film photography. And if you look at it from like a financial point of view perspective, I've made so much more money in film photography than I have playing guitar, because if you take out, so that being said, right, the time that it takes to learn your instrument properly and to be playing proficiently enough to want to be hired by, singers or by an organization or what have you. After that, it's now the business side of things. I only have one single that's out, and I made a music video for it and everything. And every time I've played it for people, like random people, they're like, oh, this is a good song. Like, why isn't this, bigger? And then that's when the business side of like music takes hold. And the years that it takes just to understand how the business side of the music business works, I spent years, like I'm like, before I release my first single, is it registered with Copyright Office? Is it under a PRO? I have to sign up to a PRO. Do I have it on Nielsen SoundScan, Sound Exchange, to make sure that the money that I can make from streaming royalties like YouTube or Spotify or purchases like on Apple Music, that's one section of it. There's another section of like radio plays, any college radio stations that like, that's, if I don't have my song properly registered or my artist name properly registered, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially that is just left off of the table. And that's just the artist side. Then you have the publishing side. Like, even if you have that all together, half of that money that you get from any stream or purchase, half of that goes to you as the artist, but then the other half goes to a publishing company. And if you don't register with a PRO as a publisher, then that's half of your dollar that's not being collected, and it goes into a pot of darkness, like a literal pot of darkness. Of just like, oh, this is like, $3 billion of people's money that no one claims, because these artists weren't taught the business aspect of it. And I made sure I signed up as a publisher to make sure I got the publishing side of it. I'm like, you gonna run me my full check,
right?
I ain't gonna put in all this work. Like I said, my pronouns are pay me. Okay, understand, I'm not letting anything fall through the cracks,
right?
And this is a bunch of research that has to be done. Like, I could be able to play my song, that's wonderful, but if I'm not making money from it, which is a large part of why I do it, because I want this to be a lucrative career, then I'm not fully engaging myself in that. And for music, the amount of the amount of money that it takes to get all that stuff together, I can tell you right now, $50. No, honestly, $50, because you're signing up to a PRO. You can either, if you're in America, you can either use ASCAP or BMI. If you're in Canada, I believe you can use CSAC, I believe, or something like that, C-SCAN or something.
It's all of this if you want to produce your own music, like get it out, you know, without like a record label.
Right. Yes, that's what
Okay.
you do. And if you do want to sign up to a record label, they usually handle that stuff, all the business side. And all you have to do is just sing on stage or play guitar on stage or play violin on stage, what have you. And that's how that happens. However, again, they don't tell us as musicians those things. And yeah, my mother always said CYOA, cover your own assets. You know, that's not the last word, but you know, you know.
Right.
But yeah, and I'm like, I have to make sure all of that is covered before I release the song, because if not, and let's just say I release my song, right? And the chord progression sounds similar to, like, I believe it was a One Republic song or something like that. But how I'm doing, like, the instrumental part is a little bit different, but it's the same, you know, similar chords. If I don't have my song copyrighted, and then someone else takes that same chord progression that sounds too similar, I can't really go to, you know, to court and be like, oh, well, you know, they did this but I did that first. And it's like, okay, where's the record? What was the, well, I didn't have it because they said, you know, when you make it, it's copyrighted. Yes, but you have more legal standing and defenses if they can look at the Library of Congress, look up your name, the name of your song, be like, oh, there it is. There's so much that goes on behind it. And I have a bunch of musician friends. They don't get told these things. And I'm like, the reason why I don't have a lot of music out is because I spend so much time working on the business side, because that's more important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, we were talking about this with Leo last week. I mean, and even conversations that we have outside, like the lack of knowledge that's out there for artists. And it's really sad because we know what art can be. And like I know the art I can produce, Mars that you can produce, you know, the Cap that you can produce, but it's like when we're not taught these things, it's like, what do you do? And I feel like, you know, the people that have made it, that are in the industry, that know all of this stuff, they're just like, go for it, you got it. But it's like you're leaving out a whole other chunk of information that I need to make it into the same places that you have already made it in, you know? And like, I think that's why we wanted this season to be about education, because it's important to highlight, you know, like, yeah, the art is great, but if you're not really understanding the, you know, whole iceberg that's underneath the water, like if you don't know that chunk of information, then, you know, your art, that passion for your art, it, like, unfortunately, it can only take you so far, you know? And like, yeah,
it leaves you vulnerable. It does. Not understanding the full scope, and you can dedicate so much time to the craft itself, but if you're planning on making money from it, if you want some type of compensation from it, not understanding the entrepreneurial side, the business side of it, hurts you. It hurts you a lot. It hurts the funds that you want to make. It hurts your credibility. It hurts all of it. Like, there's so much vulnerability with also wanting to have a level of professionalism and career off of your art.
Yeah, and I feel like people can take advantage of you because they know
That's
you
exactly
don't
what I
know.
was thinking.
Like, like you were
Welcome to
talking
record
about
labels.
record. Exactly.
Yes.
Look at us on the same page, y'all. But yeah, it's like record labels. Yes, it's like we've heard so many stories out there with all of these amazing musicians where they're like,
Lord
I
have
left
mercy.
that record label because they was trying to this, and this, and they was taking my money, la, 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 la. And it's like, I think when you're a young artist, at least I know in the dance world, we're so eager to just be told what to do. We're just like, I want to dance. Like I just want to be with the company. You tell me where to show up and perform. But it's like, baby girl,
It's more than that.
it's more than that. And we can't just be like, you control my career and I will be your puppet. Like,
Immediately no.
I would like right. It's
Immediately
like
no.
take more ownership of your like
You said that with your chest.
art
Absolutely.
form.
No, of course, I agree, because even if you like take it to, even if you make it to like the most simplest form, right? Break it down to a simplest form, you know. All of us, we are artists in the sense that we will be on stage for something, you know. At least for me as a musician. Mars, you as a musician. Kira, you as a dancer. There is the text behind it. Okay, the light, you know, where do you want to stand? Okay, you're going to be standing here. All right, are you mic'd up properly? You know, so on and so forth for you and I. Are you know, is your instrument plugged in? Kira, for you, okay, the lights are going to be on. Okay, it's going to be these lights. Is it too bright for you? Do we bring it down? Those are things that even here with the podcast, you know, when they set up the mics and the video cameras and everything, there are things that go on behind the scenes that are no pun intended, instrumental to
Nice
to one. Thank you that are instrumental to the people in front of the camera, because those things are what make the experience for the person in front of the camera that much easier, you know. And
That's what makes it happen in the first place.
exactly and there's only so much you can do, you know, as a person in front of the camera before you need somebody else to be like, oh, can you hit record, can you pause here, so on and so forth. So I find that it's important, especially when you are someone who wants to be on stage, whether you're a dancer or a musician or what have you, that the rapport that you have, the relationship that you have with the people who are behind the scenes, a lot of the times is more important, because those people that you treat right, you treat with respect, that you don't have this ego when you're coming on stage, oh, it's all about me. Because as soon as you think that it's all about you, you'll have one tech guy or one tech gal back there be like, oh, okay, what lights you got to hit to put to when you do your solo and it's just a spotlight, what light is it? And even if you know what light it is, how you gonna turn it on if you won't be on stage? Right. Like, they will humble you real fast. Humble. They will humble you. But yeah, it's a lot of research. I'm a person that does a lot of background research. I'm currently working on my own film photography project, and Kara can tell you, her and I both spent weeks like making sure that what I was creating was properly researched. Like the wardrobe, the environment of where I was shooting, the shots being framed up themselves. It's a lot of background research that needs to be done, because if you care about it, if what you're doing is important to you, and you put in that effort, like you were saying before, when people see that, you know, especially with painting or drawing or film photography, people are going to be like, oh, okay, this was
it.
That's
yeah.
that stuff.
That's that stuff.
I want to buy that.
Right. right. How much is that? You said 200,000. How about 350? You know what?
You're like, sure.
I can work with that.
Sure.
Yeah. Make sure you KAV. Right. There you go.
You know, I will say, when it comes to like people buying art, that sometimes I do wish I was a visual artist.
I'm saying,
I'm like, y'all be making.
Yeah.
It takes a little while, but yeah.
Once you get there, you're there.
You're there,
and the money's there,
and you can literally create anything. Like in class. I'm gonna bring it up because this honestly pisses me off. But a banana taped to a wall recently sold for $1.5 million.
Don't piss me off.
$1.5 million.
That sounds like some underhanded art appraisal type of thing, but yeah.
I'm just like, huh?
Why?
I'm sure I've taped a banana to a wall when I was like 3 years old.
Right. You mean I could have made a $1.5 million?
$1.5 million.
Because I was just playing around.
Had I known.
Right.
Oh my gosh. But you know, it's fine. We love dance.
Yeah.
We love it.
Yeah.
Starts crying. You guys know that Stewie,
right?
With the Stewie episode or Family Guy episode, when Stewie's like, he's like, I guess I'll just go to sleep then, and then he turns over and he's like, me, me would dance.
Right. That's really how it feels.
I wanted to talk about like education and art, and like you just said, you know, you do a lot of research, and how is that research done? You know, like in what ways are you having to continue to develop yourself as an artist, and also like be willing to put in the work to keep growing?
Do you want to know it under the umbrella of music or film photography? Because it's two separate things. A little bit. Both.
Yeah.
Both
Okay.
of both of them. We want both of them.
All right. So the connections that both of them have is a lot about who the greats were before you. You know, you definitely want to look at. So if I'm looking at music, I would use Jimi Hendrix as an example, or Kieran, my favorite artist, John Mayer. You know, and when I remember when I was learning about guitar and things like that, I purchased books. I bought a book about Jimi Hendrix. Like, it was an explanation behind every one of his songs. Like, I read that 2, 3, 4 times. There's a book that I had at my uncle's that was a Jimi Hendrix like biography, but it was told from first person, talking about Jimi Hendrix's time as a 27th paratrooper. You know, he was honorably discharged because he had broken his ankle, like I think on his 8th jump or something like that. And that's the reason why he wasn't like sent to Vietnam and stuff like that, you know, because it was around that same time, if I'm right. Hendrix was part of all these different groups. He was part of the Isley Brothers. He was a guitarist in the background. If you look at old Isley Brother videos, you can see him playing because he plays left-handed. He's the only one in the background that does that. He was with Little Richard and a couple of other artists. He had met one of his later bandmates, Billy Cox, when they were both training in the 27th paratrooper. So like all that research I've done, I've done months, years worth of it, because I wanted to know in that time period, okay, what did he do that revolutionized music? You know, what are his quips, I guess, for lack of a better word, when he's playing the guitar? What are certain things that he plays that's just like, oh, okay, just by the sound of it, you know that's Hendrix, you know? Same thing with John Mayer, his background, you know, him growing up in Stamford, Connecticut, you know, his time at Berkeley, you know, when he went down to Georgia, when he moved down to Georgia to improve his career, things like that. Like, it's a lot of research that I do, not just, oh, this music sounds cool, I want to sound like that. I like to delve very deep into the story of the artist. You know, what inspires, or not even inspires, what pushes them musically to create what they create. You know, as far as film photography, you know, you have the greats like Gordon Parks. Gordon Parks is the director behind the Shaft movies. That's what a lot of people knew him for, at least in his, you know, later on in his life. Also, I believe it was on Vibe magazine, where you have the photo of all these hip hop artists like in Harlem, like on Brownstone. That was shot by him, and it was a recreation
By Gordon?
Yeah, by Gordon Parks. And it was a recreation of a photo that was done during, I believe, the Harlem Renaissance, of a bunch of famous black men in music at that time, I believe. So Gordon Parks was recreating that, and then he was the first black man to be employed and a photographer for Life magazine, and it was because of how he was photographing certain images of black youth in the South, you know, in relation to like white youth. What else? He shot. He was on assignment with Malcolm X. He had to earn that, because even when he was shooting for them, Malcolm X was just like, you shoot for the white man, and I don't know if you really have earned your place to be here, you know. You know, take these photographs and understand If we like them, we'll let you know. If we don't, you
Bye.
gonna find out.
Sayonara.
Right.
you will learn, you know. And it's stuff like that, you know, delving deep into what these artists are creating, how they're creating. And I'm looking at it, I'm just like, okay, how can I put my 2 cents in, you know? How can I really not necessarily reinvent the genre in film photography or in music, but how can I make it so that you know, oh, that's Kavion Sabio by visually looking at his work, or you know and I've actually figured out like a certain guitar type of soloing that I do, a certain part where it's like, oh yeah, that's definitely Kavion. Like it's very important to understand the greatness that came before, so you know how to create your own greatness in your own day.
Yeah. It sounds like I mean, in the Black community, you know, it's like we learn from the past, you know, and all that stuff. But
It's a lot of that.
it's sometimes I feel like we, like in doing that, we end up trying to be that person, or like it's about continuing the legacy, when really it should be about, or one part of it can be like what you're doing. Like, okay, I'm diving deep, not so I can understand their techniques, you know, learn how to play exactly how they play, or shoot photos exactly how they shoot photos, shot photos, past tense. But it's like, okay, how can I learn from them, so then I can understand how to use that inspiration to then create my own thing, you know? Like, it's not about derivatives, it's about I'm making my own lane. That way, you know, if they were still alive today, or, you know, if they are, it's like I'm equal with them, you know, rather than someone being like, oh, you're like this, you're like this,
Right,
you know?
right. I don't want it to be where I'm playing a bunch of cover songs and just like, oh, okay, you definitely got the John Mayer tone down, or you definitely have the Jimi Hendrix tone down. It's just like, no. It'll be more like, I hear where you got inspired from John Mayer here.
Yeah.
I hear where you got inspired by like Jimi Hendrix here. I hear where you have been inspired by like other artists, and how you have blended those together to really like solidify your own,
To make your own voice.
Yes, your own specific voice.
Yeah, no, I'm working with a choreographer right now, and like every time we have like our meetings, he's like trying to grow his own company. Like he talks about that so much. Like, you know, I come from William Forsythe, from Alvin Ailey, from like, you know, these big figures in dance who have their, you know, we hear those names and you're like, oh, I know who this is. I know what style, you know, movement they're going to be doing. But he's like, I'm not trying to be that. You know, I want people to look at my work and see, oh, like that's got a little Forsythe taste in it, you know. But it's like, you know, that like they're not them,
right?
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think that's really dope.
Yeah,
is what I'm getting at.
And I think it's also an art to learning an art that's kind of it's starting to be lost. Like,
yes,
there's been, at least within like, and I can only really speak to music in this case, but like there's been an uptick in like a certain way of singing, and especially within R&B,
italicized,
and not even
singing.
just italicized, but it's the instrumental, it's the italicized singing, like there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of emulating of like Janae Aiko, a lot of emulating Kehlani.
It all sounds
like
the same,
and it's like, y'all, I get it, love their music down bad,
but we already have that.
We already have it. We need
like,
something new. Everybody sounds the same.
It's like, how can you take that and make it your own, make it sound like you? You don't need to emulate them to be considered good. You can sound like you and recognize, like, yeah, okay, your sound sounds like this person just a little bit, but you have your own thing going on.
Right. You hear where their inspirations come from, but you know it's not a like you said, reinventing the wheel is, you know, you can't do that, you know. But also with like rappers, like I've heard Snoop Dogg say this, you know, it was just like in his interviews, it's just be like, everybody's sounding the same, you know.
Yeah.
When you in the early 90s, well, no, in the early 2000s, just all of 2000s actually, you could tell the difference between a Snoop Dogg song, a 50 Cent song, an Eminem song, and a Kanye song. each of them have their own
sound.
specificity, right? Like there's so much of a difference in them, not just by like their tone, like their actual, you know, rapping voice or speaking voice, but how they approach a cadence, you know. As an example, one of my favorite songs to do in karaoke is Forever by Drake. And people get very surprised when I do the whole thing. Like, she's been there before. Like, I've had people come up to me like, wow, like you did all of those, like every part. But Drake's verse is different from Kanye's, it's different from Lil Wayne's, it's different from Eminem's, because each of them have their own way of approaching that same beat. Nowadays, everyone sounds the same. Like, it's such a watered down, recreated version, and it's played out.
Yeah, and I like, you guys know, like when you're in school and you know you have all those friends that want to be rappers, and it's like everyone's like, listen. I mean, you know, go off, like you're putting in that work, but it's like everyone's like, listen to my beat, and it's like it all sounds the same across the board, and it's like, I don't know, like I think that's what adds to what makes it so difficult to become a musician, because like right now I feel like in the air is you have to sound like somebody else, or like there's a specific sound, and if you don't fit that, then you're not going to make it. But in reality, it's the opposite. It's like, this is the sound out there, somebody make something new, because then you'll stand out, you know what I'm saying?
Right. And that also comes from again, the business side of it, you know, because the people who are investing in you, you know, the record labels and all like that, they're like, this is what works, so let's just keep doing this. You know, that's why you have certain movies, like the genre is just like everything is a regurgitation of the last one, because it already sold and they want to have a surefire thing. But that's not how art works. That's not how creativity works. That's imitation. That's not creation. You know, so those two things are completely separate, and it makes it more difficult for people to expressively find themselves, because they're like, well, this isn't what people are listening to, and I'll sacrifice and forego, you know, ingenuity and creativity and my own personal individuality for the bag, for a paycheck. And I'm like, if I have to choose between making a bunch of money but not feeling like I'm creating anything that's worthwhile or sounding individualistic, and just not having the proper financial connections, I'd rather do that, because once I do, again, all that education of like, okay, I've created a piece, you know, on the violin, or I've drawn something, or I've choreographed a beautiful dance piece. Now that I have that, now it's about networking. You know, it's about, okay, how do I learn? What education do I need to get on the proper spaces to be in to properly connect with somebody? I need to learn, how am I going to kind of pitch myself in a few minutes, you know, how to have a conversation, because certain people, they're like, oh, obviously they want money, that's the one thing they're lacking, but do I want to spend time around this person and then be like, oh, you're actually a dope person, Kira, right? What? Oh yeah, we do. How much you need? Cool. Mars, what you need? How much for that new violin? What, 3,000?
Yeah, keep speaking that into existence, because
right? Like, because that's really all it is.
Yeah. It's like that thing of like, you know, you don't want to make it, but have like forgotten yourself in the process, or like completely abandoned what you really care about, just so you can have the bag. Like, we need money, yes, we love it, but also like those are the moments where it's like, money isn't everything if it means, you know, sacrificing who you are in the process. So you wanna wrap us up?
Y'all hit the nail on the head with that one. Wow, words. No, yeah, it's just not losing yourself whenever you are trying to make it specifically and solely with your art. It's a hard thing to do, but if that's something you're able to do early on, it'll be, if you can say no early on, it's easier to say no when you've made it. And I think we're starting to see a little bit more of that pushback now with like artists who've kind of come into a rise. Like, I want to say it was Meg Thee Stallion who recently had a situation with like her record label, and she ended up, I don't know if she switched, but there was something with it where like she didn't sign into something, and I might not be thinking of the right rapper, but it was definitely like a female rapper who didn't sign into something that would have ultimately like damaged her ability to make money and make the art that they're making. And they're still doing fine. They're still doing just fine. And this was earlier on in her career, and we see where she's at now. Saying no early now, like, and we just had a guest speaker talking about like saying no in a way that's still, in one of our classes, that like how saying no can still set you up for yeses in the future without hindering your ability to be a professional.
Yeah, and it's like not needing somebody else's validation to feel like you still have something that's worthy to like share with the world.
Before we officially wrap up, Kav, thank you so much for coming on, and
Thank you for having me.
of course, and for sharing with us. Like, I feel like I've learned some new things as well.
I know. I feel like I was thinking about this while we were speaking. I was like, we've already had so many like conversations outside of like the podcast, obviously, because we're all like, I mean, well, we're together, but you know, we're all friends. you know, also, so it's like, part of me is like, what are we gonna talk about? What are we gonna talk about?
Trust me when I say I could talk for another 2 hours easily.
Be like that.
I mean, hey, last season we were going on and on and on. Yeah.
Yapping.
Yeah, you just get so carried away with it, but
Yeah.
no, it was awesome having you on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, and thank you all for listening. I'm gonna reiterate again, if you haven't watched the last episode with Leo Zhang, please go watch that. And just to continue to engage, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, we'll see.
Tell
you
your
guys next
friends.
time. Tell your friends about the i.B.Artin
Tell a friend to tell a
podcast.
friend.
Tell a friend and tell a friend. She's back.
I'm hollering. Bye, y'all.
Bye.